How many of you listening right now run to the store by yourselves, whether it's to get a gift for somebody, grocery shopping, buying an outfit for yourself, whatever? How many of us just jump in our cars and run up to the store without thinking anything of it, without thinking that we have to stay vigilant and check our surroundings, around every turn? We don't think that we're being followed and stalked and that somebody is watching our every movement and waiting for us in the parking lot. We don't think things like that when we're just doing an everyday task, just a normal everyday run. Well, I can tell you one thing. After hearing this case, you will most likely be checking over your shoulder anytime you go into a store. When you're in the parking lot, you'll probably be checking rows over to make sure that there's nobody that's watching you or eyeing you from afar. Like, this story will remind you to be on your toes and to be alert at all times. Hey guys, it's Diana. Welcome back to the Mad Chatter podcast. Today we're going to be going to Overland Park, Kansas. We're going to be talking about the Kelsey Smith case. And this case was very upsetting to me and very sad to me. And mostly because she was doing such a normal routine thing that we all do all the time. And, she didn't have like a care in the world. She was happy. She was in a great mood. And then in an instant, somebody decided to just take everything from her, just everything. And it bothers me so much because she was only 18 years old. And, I have a 19-year-old daughter. I have an 18-year-old niece. And, she runs to the store by herself all the time. And, Kelsey Smith had ran to Target, and I go to Target all the time. My daughter goes to Target all the time. My niece goes to Target all the time. So it's very upsetting, and it's very upsetting because all of this also happened like in the daytime. Like, it was after 7 p.m., but it was in June. So it was still light outside and it still happened. And, you're not even safe in the daytime anymore. So if anything, this case definitely has reminded me to check my surroundings, because I was thinking I really don't really do that. And I definitely am going to be doing that after this case. And you probably will be too, because it's just really, really sad. This happened June 2nd, 2007. And Kelsey had just graduated high school, not even 2 weeks prior. She was just running up to Target. She was just going to grab a gift for her boyfriend. It was their 6-month anniversary, and they were actually celebrating that night with dinner and stuff. So she was just running up to Target super quick, and she would be back. Her family expected her to come right back. And we on their surveillance photo from Target, it shows her leaving the store at 7:07 and getting into her car around then. So she had left her house shortly after 6:30, and she was only in Target 10 to 15 minutes. And the man or the guy, whatever, that was following her literally pulled in just 1 minute after she did. Just 1 minute. He just saw her at the exact right moment. So he probably pulled in, and she had already been there, but she was probably getting her stuff, you know what I mean, from the car, and then getting out. And he probably saw her walking into the store when he was sitting in his car still, because like I said, it was June and she had shorts on. And he said that the reason why he zeroed in on her was because he thought she had nice legs. And then shortly after 6:30, we see her walking into Target on their surveillance camera. And 30 seconds after that, we see him walking in, and his name was Edwin Hall. He was 26 years old at the time, and he had a prior police record, which involved hitting a boy in the head with a bat. And I guess Edwin was adopted when he was 7 or whatever, and then put back into the foster system at 15 because he threatened his foster sister. But yeah, so he had that a little bit of a violent past. So he follows Kelsey into Target, and you can see him following her at a distance through the different aisles, and she's just walking around. She has no idea that this fucking creep is following her. And that is the scariest part, is she's just walking around looking at stuff. It's a everyday thing. You know what I mean? It's nothing out of the ordinary to run into the store, right? And that's the most terrifying part to me, is she didn't know. And we can see him following her, so we know, but she doesn't know. And we know the outcome. And seeing it is just like, oh, I don't know. It is terrifying, but it's also a huge eye opener to always, always check your surroundings. Like, you never know. I don't care how public the place is, how big the place is, how many people are around you. You never know. One of those people could be one of the people that want to kill you. You know, it's just terrifying. So just be on guard at all times, please. And once she headed towards the checkout, Edwin headed towards the parking lot. You know, once he knew that he wasn't meeting anybody else and that she was actually alone and that she was going to be going out into the parking lot alone, he ran out there ahead of her and he ran to his truck. He drove an older boxy truck. He retrieves his gun from it, and then he waits until Kelsey walks outside. And we can see her walking to her car. And then if you slow the video down, well, once the target people slow the video down, they actually saw like this flash of somebody running like full speed towards Kelsey. So he basically forced her into her car with the gun and then forced her to drive away, because we can see her driving away on the footage. So when Kelsey didn't show up, you know, for her dinner date and everything, like, her boyfriend and her parents automatically knew something wasn't right, because Kelsey was very responsible with checking in and letting people know where she was and stuff. Plus, she had just bought her boyfriend an anniversary present. She bought wrapping paper and everything. So she was trying to make it back home to wrap it, before their dinner date. So they started trying to call her, and her boyfriend started trying to call her, and nobody could reach her, and they knew where she was going. So they all like got together, the boyfriend, the parents, even the grandparents all got together, and they, started searching for her. They spread out and started searching for her. And the grandparents actually are the ones that found Kelsey's Buick sitting in the parking lot of like an abandoned mall that was across the street, which also freaks me out because our Target has like an abandoned mall basically right across the street. So I don't know, this case just, I don't know, it freaks me out. So they found her car at like 11 p.m., the grandparents did. And they call Kelsey's parents and they say, we just found her car in the abandoned parking lot across the street from Target. And Kelsey's dad, Dean, is not a retired police department, but he was an off-duty policeman at the time. He was with the force for like 17 years before he went into the Senate. But so they called the parents, and, Dean's like, okay, told his wife, call Verizon and see if we can get like her last location. And so the mom, Missy, tried calling Verizon and tried to get this information, but Verizon would not give it to them. And so, Dean called the police department and then had them try to get it, and still Verizon would not give it to them because of privacy issues. But at least they could start processing her car and dusting for fingerprints and everything. And her car was found unlocked, but her purse was still in it, and her gifts that she had just bought her boyfriend were still in it. The receipt was in her purse, but her cell phone was missing and the keys were missing. But they found, when they dusted the car, they found prints on it that, later on they found belonged to Edwin. But when they ran the prints that they found on the receipt and her seatbelt, when they ran it through CODIS, nothing came back because Edwin didn't have any prior felonies or anything like that. So the police, immediately go to Target the next morning, and they start going through like their surveillance videos, and they see this fucking creep following Kelsey around the store. And then they see him, run out of the store before her. And it's a grainy ass video. You got to think it's 2007. So they see this white male that has on like a white t-shirt and dark colored jeans. And that's all that they know. They end up getting more footage for the abandoned mall across the street, and they actually see the guy that they saw following Kelsey. They see him dropping off her car and running across the parking lot, like towards the street. And that was around shortly after 9. Thankfully, the police released they released footage and they released like still photos of the man in the white t-shirt and the dark shorts or the dark jeans or whatever jean shorts he may have had on. And they also got footage of his truck. So they released that as well. And double thankfully, Edwin's neighbor, noticed the truck because, like I said, it was like an older style boxy truck and it kind of stood out. So he noticed the truck and then noticed like that the build of the grainy photo that the police had provided, matched Edwin. So he called into the police. So all this happened over the course of like 3 or 4 days while they are still waiting for Verizon to release the information about the last place that Kelsey's phone had pinged. And it just so happens that on the day that the neighbor called in the tip, Verizon actually had, gave him the information about the ping, and the cops were like on their way to Kelsey's body. So the police go to Edwin's house after they receive the tip or whatever. They go to his house and they actually find him and his wife and 4-year-old son like literally in the middle of packing for a vacation. And I say that in quotation marks because he said that the vacation was planned, but I mean, it seems kind of convenient, doesn't it? But anyway, so they take him down to the police station for questioning. And I guess he's like really smug and he's just being like condescending and not cooperating and everything else. And the policeman gets a text like in the middle of the interrogation. And it literally says that like his DNA matches the DNA that was found on her seatbelt on the metal clasp. So basically the cop tells him like, hey bruh, guess what? We just found your DNA at the crime scene, because by now they had fingerprinted him and stuff. And I guess his whole attitude changed. And yeah, he ended up taking, not a plea deal, but he ended up pleading guilty and I guess it is kind of a plea deal, and avoiding the death penalty. So he got like life without parole and all that stuff. But I hope he's getting, what he deserves in prison, because the autopsy showed that not only did he SA her, but he did it in multiple different ways and then strangled her to death with her own cloth belt that she had on. And I guess like he kept strangling her. Like he would strangle her and then like until she passed out and then bring her back and then like let her gain consciousness and then strangle her again until she passed out and then let her regain consciousness, and kept doing that like multiple times until he finally just strangled her to death. Like, my God, oh my God, like this case bothers me so much. And this sick mother effer, oh my God. I even looked into like, did he have anything that triggered him that day? Like, was there anything that made that day different from all the other days? And the only thing I could really find was that day he admitted to being on Adult Friend Finder, and I guess nobody was talking to him on there, so he planned to go to the mall and maybe just approach some women. But I guess he either didn't do that or it didn't work out there, so he ended up going to Target, and that's when he saw Kelsey walking in. And, the way that he was like stalking her throughout the store and, knew the right, I guess, length to stay behind her or how not to like stand out and look suspicious or whatever, especially in broad daylight. You know what I mean? It looked like he had done this before, or, I don't know if he had went to the full extent that he did with Kelsey, but maybe he had stalked women throughout stores and stuff just to see if he could actually get away with it or whatever. But, another thing that makes me believe that I don't know. He was definitely trying to cover this up though, because he went back. I think the next day he had to went back to the body because they found bleach poured on her. Like he had poured bleach on her after he killed her, trying to get rid of like all his DNA or whatever. And he also had buried her in like a shallow grave and just threw some sticks on top of her and some leaves and was like, oh, I hope nobody sees her. I'm just gonna throw her in this fucking shallow grave and then just go home to my wife and kid like nothing's happening. He just continued to go to work. He just continued to go home, just continued to eat with his family and act like nothing had ever happened. He even tried to like apologize to the family in court and say, oh, I'm so, so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And they were just not having it. And I wouldn't have been having it either.
I'm so, so sorry for what I've done. That's it. That's all I can say.
The ground around her body also showed signs of a struggle. So he probably brought her there and did all that terrible stuff to her there, and then also killed her there, because like I said, there were signs of a struggle around her body and stuff. And they found her blood on his shoes and also his DNA underneath her fingernails. And she had been trying to fight him off as best she could, because like she had bruising on her fingers and there were abrasions on her fingers from her trying to, pull the belt off of her neck and everything. It's just horrendous. I also looked into, how prison may be treating Edwin these days. And, if any of you know anything about true crime, which I'm sure you do if you're listening to this, then you know that prison does not treat men the greatest who have hurt women and children. So I hope he's getting, like I said, everything he deserves. And if he is in like seclusion or solitary confinement or something to protect him from that, then I'm glad that he's in a four-cornered room all by himself, staring at gray walls for the rest of his miserable life. I also want to say that through this brutal act, Kelsey's parents continued to fight for her, and they actually have passed laws, and they passed the Kelsey Act, which basically tells like big companies like Verizon, all tell, whatever telecommunications place, like, hey, you need to ping this cell phone. Like there's danger, like my kid or my family member or whoever's life is in danger, and we don't have time to wait 4 days like Verizon had this family waiting. So I just want to say thank you to her parents for fighting basically for all of us now, because Kelsey and her parents have saved tons of lives through this fight. So thank you guys. And on that note, if you guys have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will talk to you later. Bye.